I stood by the kitchen window, watching the autumn leaves drift past the glass, my coffee growing cold in my hands. The house felt different lately. Heavy. Like the walls themselves were holding secrets they didn't want to share with me anymore. My son Daniel and his wife Rebecca had moved in 6 months ago. They said it was temporary, just until they got back on their feet after Daniel lost his job at the tech company. I didn't hesitate. What father would? Your child needs help, you give it. No questions asked. But something had shifted in the past few weeks. I couldn't quite put my finger on it at first. Just small things. Whispered conversations that stopped when I entered a room. Shared glances between them that lasted a fraction too long. Rebecca's phone face down on every surface. Daniel asking casual questions about my finances that felt rehearsed. I'm 72 years old, not senile. I've built 3 successful businesses from the ground up and retired comfortably. You don't get there by being oblivious to the people around you. The first betrayal warning came on a Tuesday morning. I'd gotten up early, as I always do, and was making breakfast when I heard their voices drifting down from upstairs. Their bedroom door must have been cracked open because the sound carried clearly through the old house's ventilation system. "He's never going to just give it to us," Rebecca said, her voice tight with frustration. "We need to be smarter about this." I know. That was Daniel, sounding exhausted. "But pushing too hard will make him suspicious." "He's already suspicious. Haven't you seen the way he looks at us now? We're running out of time." My hand had frozen halfway to the stove. The eggs in the pan began to burn, but I couldn't move. Couldn't process what I was hearing. "The lawyer said we have options," Daniel continued. "If we can prove he's not mentally competent." "Prove it how?" "He's sharper than both of us combined." "There are ways." Dr. Morrison mentioned that dementia assessments can be subjective, if the right doctor asks the right questions in the right way. I turned off the stove and walked quietly back to my bedroom. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. My son. My only child. The boy I'd raised alone after his mother died when he was 12. The young man I'd put through college, helped with his first car, his first apartment, his wedding. He was plotting to declare me incompetent so he could take control of my money. And Rebecca. I'd welcomed her into our family with open arms. Treated her like the daughter I never had. Paid for half their wedding when her own parents couldn't afford to contribute. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I'd ever experienced. Deeper than losing my wife. Deeper than watching my own father waste away in a nursing home. Because this was a choice. A calculated, deliberate choice to destroy me for financial gain. I didn't confront them that day. Or the next. Instead, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. I noticed how Rebecca watched me during meals, her eyes tracking every movement, every word. Like she was cataloging evidence. I caught Daniel going through my mail when he thought I was napping. I found my bank statements slightly out of order in my desk drawer, though I always kept them meticulously organized. One evening, I pretended to be confused about what day it was. I asked Daniel if it was Thursday when it was clearly Monday. The look that passed between him and Rebecca made my stomach turn. Rebecca actually pulled out her phone and started typing furiously. Making notes, I realized. Building a case. They wanted incompetent. I'd give them incompetent. Over the next 2 weeks, I put on the performance of my lifetime. I left the stove on twice. Deliberately. I asked Rebecca the same question 3 times in 1 hour. I got confused about whether I'd taken my blood pressure medication. I told the same story twice during one dinner, as if I'd forgotten I'd already told it. All the while, I was watching them, learning their patterns, understanding their plan. I discovered that Rebecca had been researching elder law firms online. Daniel had bookmarked several articles about obtaining power of attorney for aging parents. They'd opened a new bank account together with a suspiciously large credit limit. They were spending money they didn't have yet, counting on their scheme to work. The rage I felt was unlike anything I'd ever known. But underneath it was something else. A cold, calculating determination. I hadn't built my fortune by being reactive. I'd always been 3 steps ahead, seeing around corners, anticipating problems before they arose. If they wanted to play games with my mind and my money, I'd show them what a real strategist could do. I called my lawyer, Gerald Henderson, from my car one afternoon when Daniel and Rebecca thought I was at a doctor's appointment. Gerald had handled my affairs for 30 years. He knew me well. "Gerald, I need your help with something delicate," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the anger burning in my chest. "Of course, Richard. What's going on?" I told him everything. The overheard conversation, the watching, the note-taking, my suspicions about their financial situation and their plans for my estate. Gerald was quiet for a long moment. "This is serious, Richard. If they're actually planning to pursue a competency hearing." "They are. I'm certain of it." "Then we need to be proactive. I'll schedule a comprehensive evaluation with Dr. Patricia Chen. She's one of the most respected neuropsychologists in the state. We'll document your cognitive function thoroughly. And I think we should discuss some trust restructuring." "I have something more specific in mind," I said. "Can you come to the house tomorrow afternoon? Around 2. They're both usually out then." The next day, Gerald arrived with his briefcase and a serious expression. We sat in my study, the door locked, and I outlined my plan. "I want to change my will," I said. "But I don't want them to know about it until the moment is exactly right." "Go on." "I'm going to set up a trust. The bulk of my estate will go into it, managed by you and the bank. Daniel will get enough to live comfortably, but not the fortune he's expecting. The rest will be distributed to charities and my grandchildren when they turn 25. "That's certainly your right," Gerald said carefully. "But Richard, this is your son. Are you sure you want to?" "I'm not finished." I leaned forward. "I also want to set up a test. Something that will prove exactly what they're trying to do. I want documentation, evidence. So when this all comes out, there's no ambiguity about their intentions or my mental state." Gerald's eyes widened slightly. "What kind of test?" I explained. As I talked, Gerald's expression shifted from concern to something like admiration. "That's actually brilliant," he admitted. "Legally sound, completely defensible, and utterly devastating if they take the bait." "They'll take the bait," I said grimly. "I know my son. And I know his wife." Over the next month, I worked with Gerald to put everything in place. I underwent extensive cognitive testing with Dr. Chen, who confirmed what I already knew. My mind was as sharp as ever. The results were documented, notarized, and filed away. I restructured my estate exactly as I described. The new will was signed, witnessed, and secured. Gerald set up a special trust account with very specific provisions. Everything was ready. Then came the acting, the grand performance. I started making bigger mistakes. I wrote a check for groceries and forgot to sign it. I called Daniel by his father's name once. I left my wallet at a restaurant and seemed confused about how it had happened. Each incident was carefully calculated. Big enough to seem concerning, but not so dramatic that anyone would suspect I was faking. I was painting a picture of gentle cognitive decline, exactly what they were hoping to see. Rebecca's note-taking intensified. She started being overly helpful, guiding me by the elbow, speaking slowly and loudly as if I were hard of hearing. Daniel began making comments about getting you some help, Dad, and making sure you're safe. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for them to spring it. The moment came on a rainy evening in late November. I was in my study, pretending to doze in my armchair, when they came in together. They didn't know I was watching them through barely open eyes. Rebecca went straight to my desk and started photographing documents with her phone. Daniel stood guard at the door, looking nervous. "Did you get the bank statements?" he whispered. "Yes. And look at this." She held up a paper. "He forgot to pay his property taxes." "That's not like him." "It's getting worse," Daniel said, and I could hear both concern and calculation in his voice. "Maybe we should move faster. The appointment with Dr. Morrison is next week. Once we have his assessment, we can file the paperwork." My eyes snapped fully open. "What are you two doing?" They jumped like guilty children. Rebecca shoved her phone behind her back. Daniel's face went pale. "Dad, we thought you were sleeping. I asked what you're doing with my papers." I stood up slowly, letting them see the confusion I wanted them to see. "Why are you going through my desk?" "We're just trying to help," Rebecca said smoothly, her face arranging itself into an expression of concern. "You've seemed so forgetful lately. We wanted to make sure all your bills are being paid." "I pay my own bills. I've always paid my own bills." "We know, Dad," Daniel said, coming closer. "But you have to admit, you've been a little confused sometimes. Missing appointments. Forgetting conversations. We're worried about you." I let my shoulders slump, played the part of the tired old man. "Maybe you're right. I do feel foggy sometimes." The look of triumph that crossed Rebecca's face made me want to scream. Instead, I shuffled back to my chair. "We think you should see a specialist," Daniel said gently. "Just to get checked out. Make sure everything's okay." "A specialist?" "A doctor who focuses on memory issues. Dr. Morrison. He's very good, Dad. He can help." I nodded slowly. "If you think it's best." After they left, I sat alone in the darkness of my study, my hands shaking with rage. They'd taken the bait completely. Dr. Morrison was exactly who I'd expected. A physician Rebecca had found who was known for being flexible with his diagnoses when the family had the right financial incentives. But they didn't know that Gerald had already sent Dr. Morrison a very detailed legal letter explaining the situation and warning him about the consequences of providing a fraudulent medical opinion. Dr. Morrison had withdrawn from the case within hours, claiming a conflict of interest. The appointment they thought they'd scheduled didn't exist. But I'd let them think it did for a few more days. In the meantime, I set the final phase of my plan in motion. I called a family meeting. Daniel and Rebecca looked nervous when I gathered them in the living room one Sunday afternoon. "Good. They should be nervous. I've been doing some thinking," I began, my voice deliberately shaky. "About the future. About what happens to everything when I'm gone." Rebecca leaned forward eagerly. "That's very responsible of you, Richard. I've decided to simplify things. Make it easier for everyone." I pulled out an envelope, one that Gerald and I had prepared specifically for this moment. "This is a new will. Very straightforward. Everything divided equally between Daniel and any children he has." That wasn't true, of course. The envelope contained a blank piece of paper. But they didn't know that. Daniel's eyes locked onto the envelope like a hawk spotting prey. "Dad, you don't have to do this now. We're not worried about." "I want to do it now. While I still can." I set the envelope on the coffee table. "I'm going to go lie down. You two should read it over. Make sure it's clear." I stood up and walked toward the stairs, moving slowly, playing my part. Behind me, I heard the rustle of paper as Rebecca grabbed the envelope. But I didn't go upstairs. I circled back quietly through the kitchen and positioned myself where I could hear them without being seen. I held up my phone, already recording. "It's blank," Rebecca hissed. "What the hell? Is this some kind of test?" "Maybe he forgot to put the actual will in the envelope," Daniel said, but he didn't sound convinced. "Or maybe he's playing us." "Don't be paranoid. You've seen him. He's deteriorating. This is probably just another example of—" "We need to move faster," Rebecca interrupted. "Forget Dr. Morrison. We'll find another doctor. Someone who won't back out. And we need to get power of attorney immediately. Before he does something stupid like give all his money away to some charity." "How do we do that?" "There are lawyers who specialize in this. I've been researching. We get him declared incompetent, you become his guardian, and then we have complete control. We can sell this house, liquidate his investments, everything." "That seems extreme." "Extreme? Daniel, we're drowning in debt. Do you know what happens if we can't pay back what we owe? We lose everything. Everything. Your father is sitting on millions while we're about to lose our car. I'm not going to let some old man's stubbornness destroy our future." "He's not just some old man, Rebecca. He's my father." "Then act like his son. Take care of him by taking care of his finances. He doesn't need all this money. He doesn't even know what to do with it anymore. We're his family. We deserve to benefit from what he's built." There was a long pause. My heart was pounding as I waited to hear what Daniel would say. Some part of me, some desperate, hopeful part, wanted him to push back. To defend me. To remember who I was and what I'd done for him. "You're right," he finally said, and something inside me broke. "We need to move fast. I'll call that lawyer you found tomorrow. Let's get this done." I stopped the recording and walked quietly back upstairs to my room. I sat on my bed, the phone heavy in my hand, containing the evidence that would destroy any relationship I had left with my son. But what relationship did we really have? They saw me as an obstacle, a bank account, a problem to be solved. I sent the recording to Gerald. Then I opened my laptop and began writing a letter. Not to Daniel. I'd say everything I needed to say to him face to face. This letter was to my future grandchildren, if Daniel ever had any. An explanation. A testament. The truth about what had happened here. The next morning, I called Daniel and Rebecca into my study. My demeanor was completely different. Sharp. Clear. All the confusion and weakness gone from my voice. "Sit down," I said. "Both of you." They exchanged glances as they took their seats. Rebecca looked wary. Daniel looked confused. "I want to talk about Dr. Morrison," I began. Rebecca's face went pale. "What about him?" "The appointment you scheduled for me. The one where you hoped he'd declare me incompetent so you could take control of my estate." "Dad, what are you—" "Don't." My voice cut through Daniel's protest like a blade. "Don't insult me by lying. I heard you. Weeks ago. I've heard everything since then. I've watched you take notes on my behavior. Photograph my documents. Plot and plan like I'm already dead." The color drained from Daniel's face. Rebecca's jaw tightened. "I know about your debts," I continued. "I know you've been spending money you don't have, banking on getting access to mine. I know you were planning to have me declared mentally incompetent. I know everything." "You don't understand," Rebecca started, but I held up my hand. "I understand perfectly. You saw a vulnerable old man and a fortune you felt entitled to. So you decided to take it. We were trying to help you." Rebecca's voice rose. "You have been confused. Forgetful. We were concerned." "Really? Is that why you never once suggested I see my own doctor?" Why you sought out Dr. Morrison specifically, a physician known for providing diagnoses that benefit the family rather than the patient. Is that concern? Daniel found his voice. Dad, I know how this looks, but I had myself evaluated, I interrupted, by Dr. Patricia Chen, one of the most respected neuropsychologists in the state. She conducted extensive testing. Would you like to know what she found? Neither of them spoke. She found that my cognitive function is completely normal. Better than normal for my age, actually. All that confusion you documented, all those mistakes, I was acting, testing you, seeing if you'd try to help me or exploit me. I leaned back in my chair. You chose exploitation. The silence that followed was deafening. Rebecca's face had gone from pale to red, anger replacing shock. Daniel looked like he might be sick. You manipulated us, Rebecca spat. You set us up. I gave you every opportunity to do the right thing. Every single one. You could have talked to me about your financial problems. You could have asked for help. You could have been honest. Instead, you tried to steal from me while pretending to care for me. We're family, Daniel said weakly. You owe us. I owe you. The rage I'd been controlling for weeks finally broke through. I owe you. I raised you alone after your mother died. I worked 80-hour weeks to give you everything you needed. I paid for your education, your wedding, your mistakes. I welcomed you into my home when you needed help. And you repay me by trying to rob me. That's not fair, Daniel said, standing up. You have more money than you could ever spend. We were just trying to. To what? Help yourselves. Not me. Yourselves. I stood as well, facing my son across the desk. I changed my will 3 weeks ago. You'll inherit enough to live comfortably, but the fortune you were counting on? It's going to charity and to your future children when they turn 25. If you ever have any. Which, given what I've seen of your character, I hope you don't. Rebecca shot to her feet. You can't do that. We'll contest it. We'll prove you were manipulated or coerced or… By whom? Gerald Henderson, who's been my lawyer for 3 decades. Dr. Chen, who has no connection to me beyond a professional evaluation. Everything is documented, witnessed, legal. And I have recordings of you two plotting to defraud me. I pulled out my phone. Would you like to hear them? I played 30 seconds of their conversation about finding a compliant doctor and getting power of attorney. Rebecca's voice came through clearly. We need to get him declared incompetent, you become his guardian, and then we have complete control. When I stopped the playback, Rebecca's face was white. Daniel looked stricken. Get out of my house, I said quietly. Pack your things and leave. Today. Dad. Daniel's voice cracked. Please. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Rebecca pushed me into it and I… Don't you dare blame this on her. You're a grown man. You made your choices. Own them. I'm your son. You were my son. Right now, I don't know what you are. They left that afternoon. I watched from my window as they loaded their car, Rebecca slamming the trunk with unnecessary force, Daniel moving like a man in shock. Neither of them looked back at the house. When they were gone, I sat in the sudden silence and felt nothing. The rage had burned out. The betrayal had numbed me. I was alone in this big house, surrounded by memories of a son who apparently never existed the way I thought he did. Gerald came by that evening. We sat in my study with whiskey neither of us was really drinking. You did the right thing, he said. Did I? I destroyed my relationship with my only child. He destroyed it. You just defended yourself. I keep thinking about the moment I could have stepped in. When I first heard them talking, I could have confronted them immediately. Maybe we could have worked it out. Maybe. Richard. Gerald set down his glass. I've been practicing law for 40 years. I've seen every variation of family greed you can imagine. This wasn't a momentary weakness or a misunderstanding. They had a plan. They researched it. They were systematically building a case to take everything from you. If you'd confronted them early, they would have adjusted their strategy, been more careful. You would have lost the element of surprise. So what now? I'm a rich old man with no family. You have friends. You have your health. You have the satisfaction of knowing you won't be exploited. He paused. And who knows? Maybe someday Daniel will understand what he did. Maybe he'll genuinely apologize. People can change. I wanted to believe that, but I'd seen something in Daniel's eyes during our final confrontation. Not just guilt or shame, but resentment. Like I was the one who'd wronged him by not letting him rob me. The weeks that followed were difficult. The house felt cavernous and empty. I threw myself into charity work, serving on boards, making donations, trying to do something meaningful with the money that had caused so much pain. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Daniel and Rebecca had moved across the country, that they were struggling financially but too proud to ask for help. Part of me wanted to reach out, to offer assistance despite everything. But Gerald talked me out of it. The moment you do that, you're telling them the manipulation worked, he said. You're rewarding their behavior. If Daniel wants to rebuild your relationship, he needs to do it on his own terms, with genuine remorse and changed behavior. That call never came. Months passed. Then a year. I was sitting in my study one evening when my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mr. Thornton? A young woman's voice. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm a social worker with County Family Services. I'm calling about Daniel Thornton. My heart stopped. What happened? Is he? He's alive. But he's in the hospital. He was in a car accident 3 days ago. He's stable now, but he's been asking for you. I was in my car within minutes, driving through the night to the hospital 2 states away. All the anger, all the hurt, all the betrayal, none of it mattered. He was my son. He was hurt. I needed to be there. When I reached his room, Rebecca was sitting beside his bed. She looked up at me with red, exhausted eyes. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she stood and walked out without a word. Daniel's eyes opened. Dad, I'm here. I took his hand, shocked by how fragile he looked. I'm here. I'm sorry. Tears were running down his face. I'm so sorry for everything. You were right about all of it. About me. About what I became. I've spent the last year realizing what I threw away. Shoo. Don't talk. You need to rest. I need to say this. Please. He gripped my hand weakly. Rebecca left. The accident made her realize we had nothing left. No money, no future, and now medical bills we can't pay. She's gone. And I don't blame her. I destroyed everything good in my life chasing money that was never mine. Son. I don't want your money. I need you to know that. I don't want anything except maybe, someday, to be your son again. Really your son. Not the person I became. I sat with him through the night. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Some conversations happen in silence, in the simple act of being present. Over the following months, Daniel recovered physically. Emotionally and financially, he was broken. But for the first time since I'd overheard that first terrible conversation, I saw something real in him. Genuine remorse. Actual growth. I didn't rush to fix everything for him. He needed to rebuild his life on his own terms, to prove to himself and to me that he'd changed. But I was there, taking calls, meeting for coffee, slowly, carefully, rebuilding trust that had been shattered. He got a job. A modest one, nothing like what he'd had before, but he worked hard. He went to therapy. He dealt with his mistakes instead of running from them. One Sunday, nearly 2 years after he'd left my house in disgrace, we sat on my back porch watching the sunset. "I thought I knew everything," Daniel said quietly. "I thought I deserved your money because I was your son. I never appreciated the difference between deserving something and being entitled to it. We all make mistakes. Not like mine. I tried to steal your dignity along with your money. I tried to make you seem incompetent. That's unforgivable." "You're probably right," I said. "It should be unforgivable. But you're still here. And so am I. And sometimes that has to be enough." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why did you come to the hospital? After everything I did to you?" I thought about that for a long moment. Because underneath all the hurt and anger, you're still my son. And I'm still your father. That bond doesn't break easily. You tried to damage it, and you succeeded. But you didn't destroy it completely. Some part of me still believed in the boy I raised. The good person I knew was in there somewhere. Was that person ever really there? Or did you just imagine him? I think he was there. I think he got lost for a while, chasing the wrong things, listening to the wrong voices. But he's finding his way back. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw not the manipulative man who tried to steal from me, but a broken person trying to become whole. The question is, what kind of person are you going to be now? Daniel was quiet for a long time. Someone better. Someone worthy of a second chance. Then that's who you'll become. We sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon. The journey back from betrayal wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. There were still moments when I remembered what he'd done and felt the anger surge back. There were still nights when I wondered if I was being a fool to let him back into my life. But I also knew that life was too short for permanent grudges. That forgiveness, real forgiveness, not just the word but the actual emotional work, was as much for me as it was for him. That holding on to anger was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. My will stayed changed. Daniel knew it and accepted it. He never asked about my finances again. We rebuilt our relationship on new terms, not as benefactor and dependent, but as two adults who'd both learned hard lessons about trust, family, and what really mattered. And sometimes, late at night, I thought about those weeks when I'd pretended to be losing my mind while they plotted against me. I thought about the moment I'd heard them laughing together, so confident in their scheme, so certain I didn't know what they were doing. I'd known everything. I'd been 3 steps ahead the whole time. And in the end, I'd won. But winning had cost me something too. Innocence, maybe. The ability to trust blindly. The comfortable illusion that family was always safe. The money was protected. The charities would get what I'd promised them. Future generations would benefit from what I'd built. Justice, in its way, had been served. But on quiet evenings like this one, with my son beside me and forgiveness tentatively blooming between us, I realized that the real victory wasn't in protecting my fortune. It was in refusing to let betrayal turn me into someone bitter and closed off. It was in finding a way forward that honored both my self-respect and my love for my child. They'd tried to take everything from me, but they'd failed. Not because I'd outsmarted them, though I had, but because they'd never understood what actually mattered to me. It wasn't the money. It was never really about the money. It was about dignity, respect. The fundamental human need to be seen as a person rather than a means to an end. And in the end, despite everything, I'd preserved that. I'd protected myself without destroying my capacity for love. I'd set boundaries without building impenetrable walls. Daniel had a long road ahead of him. We both did. But we were walking it together, and that was something. The autumn leaves drifted past again, just like they had on that morning when I'd first overheard their plotting. But this time, watching them fall felt different. Like letting go of something dead to make room for new growth. Like the end of one story and the beginning of another. And that, I thought, was enough.